education is one thing. Obviously, the exposure, like my
Yeah.
peers, like who I studied with, are like are all in these amazing fields and amazing positions. So if I need any help or if I need any guidance, my peers, my seniors are always there.
Welcome, everyone, to the TechGuide podcast, where we give actual advice to those wanting to break into tech or are looking for their next gig. We have Akankshya Kar on the podcast today to talk about getting into CMU, machine learning. So excited to have her on. Thank you so much for being here.
Why, thank you so much for having me. I think it'll be a great podcast.
Yes, I'm super excited. You have a great background. You're at CMU. You've been in machine learning. You worked with Meta for a little bit. But before we get into all of that good stuff, let's talk about when you first fell in love with technology and knew you wanted to get into software development, machine learning. Take me to that time. Is there a time where you fell in love with technology?
Yeah, I think I can point it to, sometime when I was in class 6 or 7, something like that, where, my dad was a scientist, actually. He was a PhD, and he was always very passionate about computers. And he was one of the first people in my home country, India, to be working in supercomputers, back in the 80s and the 90s. So that was kind of an insane time to be working in these kind of big data, which is a very colloquial term now, but then that's what he was working on. So that kind of drove me towards software development. And, I started coding up with Python and C++. And obviously a lot of things were not there, as easy, you didn't have YouTube tutorials that time to kind of help out and learn it on the go, which is kind of very amazing resource nowadays. But yeah, that time it was more buying books, trying to see, whatever, your teachers can, help you with in the library. And that was kind of insane time to think back, maybe 10, 15 years back to kind of see how, learning has changed so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was somewhere, when I was 13 years old,
That's crazy.
something like that, when I was interested that, that's something which I want to do and I'm interested in, and that's when I started dived into it, trying to make few small projects. And then going forward in college, I chose my major as computer science engineering in my undergrad. So that kind of led me in this direction. And then again, there was a pivot point. I loved algorithms and I loved data structures, which is kind of problem solving ability. And that time ML was also a little booming, especially in that kind of reached late, but it was still something that was interesting. And I took my final year project as something called video memorability. If you think about it, some videos you remember it really well and some you don't. Why is that? Is there a generic component to it that there would be certain factors that are very interesting that you remember, long 90s, 2000s ads you remember now, but there are tons of ads you just forget. So that was something, was my first step in ML. And that kind of propelled me into it.
Okay. Well, as someone that loves advertising and videos, I have to ask, what are some of the key components that goes into remembering an ad from 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah. So one of the major things is always how vivid it is. For example, you can see, McDonald's, they have these vivid colors and, you remember those kind of ads. And especially, so we didn't have a study with sound, but a lot of people said that sound is something, if that's a catchy beat, you can easily remember it and then you visualize the ad. But we didn't have that part of the study, but it was more of how vivid it is. And the second component is if you relate to the person, for example, the influencer culture, which is so prevalent now, but in 2016, it wasn't. So, we didn't have influencers back then, but you had pop stars, performing. You would be okay, this is something that, you'd want to go. And that was something which was weird, which was part of the video generically, if you think about it. But at the same time, it was kind of what, memories it instilled in you, which kind of you remembered it for a longer time. So, yeah, that was something of an interesting work that I did.
That is super interesting to me. There's one commercial that I very vividly remember. I feel like other people would too. Is the Hershey's commercial that always comes out near Christmas of that was sound of the jingle they have there. There's teen, teen, teeny, that one. And it's kind of like music in a way where it's like, oh, I can remember a song from like 20 years ago, just because it's
Yeah.
catchy and like kind of relate to it. I want to talk a little bit more then. So you go do this project, and then you get accepted into Carnegie Mellon University, one of the most prestigious programs in the United States. So congrats on that as well.
Thank you.
But let's talk about getting into CMU. What were some of the ways that you stood out in this application process of getting into CMU?
Basically, as I was telling you, so this paper, like this work which I did, kind of resulted in a paper in a very prestigious conference, because this work was something which was very interesting that time and not many people were doing it. So that was something which kind of like, propelled me towards like computer vision and machine learning in general. And that's something. So after graduating, I joined Samsung Bangalore, where I did like a lot of these machine learning projects as well. So my my philosophy has always been trying to kind of like help people and trying to make their lives easier. So one of the interesting projects that I did was kind of like to help farmers in India, which was like a social responsibility project, as well as did have like a lot of machine learning and computer vision in it. So basically what it was that, farmers, they can use these, they are not like in US farmers are very rich, but in India, farmers are like very, very poor. They're actually poor as lot. But so they have like these really cheap phones, and they get cheated a lot by middlemen. They say that, it's $100 grain, for 1 kg or something like that. But actual value would be like $500. So they get cheated by like close to like 70% of the value of the grain which they had. So I had this project which could just take a picture of it, and you just spread your grains, you take a picture of it, it will tell you what the grade quality is and what the government pricing is, so the farmer would never get cheated. So that was something which was kind of like done in a startup environment. Like we were running our own startup in Samsung, and we also went to Samsung Korea to present the work and trying to get all these kind of like funding situations. And we also talked to multiple stakeholders within India and government. So that was kind of like something I would say as a standout project for me, which kind of like, was obviously piqued, interest from CMU and the other universities as well, because it's something of a holistic venture that I did. It had the technology component of it. It had the, the software development aspect of it. You had the apps and everything. And at the same time, it had the, entrepreneurship angle of it as well, that, you're going and talking to stakeholders. So that was kind of like one project which like I'm really passionate about, like till now. And I think that was like a definite standout project, along with like we published a paper with this as well. And so this paper, along with the video memorability paper, which I was talking about earlier, I think those were like the two standout projects which I think CMU kind of looked at and said that, okay, this person has proven good experience in machine learning and computer vision, and she should definitely be a good fit in the program. So I think, and obviously my experience in Samsung, I had professional experience of 2 years. I got promoted in the while as well because of the projects I was doing. So I think those kind of things definitely helped me, kind of like come in the picture, like so that the review committee decides your application, they see the holistic view.
I think that's really cool. So it was basically like these 2 research papers that were obviously very sweet, but it was also that experience you had in like basically a startup of actually applying like machine learning and computer vision that did make you stand out at CMU.
Yeah, and obviously I had like a couple of small projects. Like initially when I joined Samsung, I was working in this augmented reality based application for indoor path navigation. Like they were like smaller projects which did not have like as impact as, like for example, these 2 projects would. But I think it was like the bits and pieces that, how you connect your story, like, starting from, how you were inspired to be a developer, to machine learning, to helping people with machine learning. So I think it's the journey, I would say, that kind of like made me a standout candidate for CMU.
And so let's just say like someone's like listening right now and they're like, oh my gosh, like I want to get into CMU. This is awesome. and they're like, but I need to get like a research paper. I need to do something like a research. Where would you advise someone to like start on that journey to like identify a research paper they can tackle? Where would you advise?
Yeah, so actually I can go by my journey, like how like my first research paper venture, it was based on video memorability, as I said that. But guess what? There were like people working on image memorability. So
Interesting.
MIT was actually working on image memorability that time, and they had like bunch of 3 or 4 back-to-back papers from different PhD students, and that kind of like caught my eye. So you guys can start as well. That you like CMU. I know there are like 30 awesome professors, in the robotics institute and this computer science department that publish papers every conference. So you can target CVPR, you can target ICML, you can target SIGGRAPH, you can target ICCV. They're like these top 4 conferences, and you can Google them. They're all open.
Yeah.
Like you can go to the website, you can read those papers. Think of areas where people are working on it. Like, for example, like when I was in CMU, like half the papers were in autonomous driving, where I'm currently working.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm working in autonomous driving field. So I was like very interested. So I worked with augmented reality, I'd worked with vision, but I'd never worked with robotics as a service, which is autonomous driving. And I was very passionate. So I, read through multiple papers, trying to see what different they were doing, and thinking and innovating as to, like, for example, it could be as basic as someone was working on image memorability. Nobody was working on video memorability. Like image and video kind of like go hand in hand, but like, I was like one of the first people to kind of like think. After that, obviously a lot of papers came in, but at that time you can think that, what all is happening now with Gen AI stuff, LLMs, you're like everywhere, like, AI and all of those things. Look at what papers are getting published. Start from there.
So identify, what papers are actually getting published, and then you're going to start to be able to like really distill like what topics you want to be talking about.
Yeah.
I also want to ask a question that came up as you were talking. So you have your research papers that got you in, and also your experience. Both are very, very important, but do you feel one is more important than the other one if you're trying to get into a very prestigious school, or what would that percentage breakdown be?
I think it depends on what kind of program you're targeting. So if it's a very research focused program, like I know there are like, other universities which have very research heavy papers. Like I know University of Maryland is has this robotics program, which is like very research heavy. So they generally, hope to find like people with heavy research background. So I know people like, for example, I worked in Samsung for 2 years. I know my peers, they went to different research organizations all over the world. If you went to Canada, Europe, even in India, and they spent those 2 years just researching because they knew they wanted to target universities who are research focused, and then they are very sure they want to do PhD. So I was kind of like in the middle. I was not sure that if I should do a PhD or not. So it was kind of like I wanted to kind of have a balance of both, that I can work and I can also do research, and then I'll see if I like it or not. To be honest, I was like very confused if I should do like masters or not, also, to be honest. But yeah, I'm very happy that I made that decision. But at the same time, like, if like, for example, my program was a little more professional program, they wanted people with experience. They wanted people who have applied ML rather than research ML. So that's where like my projects were all applied ML, as we were discussing, right? They were all like trying to target customers, who can use my ML project and benefit their lives. So that's why I think it's the program that you want to target. Like CMU has research focused programs, CMU has professional degrees as well. So I think it depends on how best your profile fits and what you are interested in.
Yeah. And I think, that's a good tidbit. Like, I didn't know that, and maybe some other people didn't know either. It's like really identifying like, oh, what is this program value? Is it experience or is it research? And then maybe get three of those there.
And you can definitely see, like, if you see, like, you have each university has like the students who got enlisted. Like, for example, in my batch, I think there were like 27 people in my course. So all of their names are available on their website. You can like Google them. They all have LinkedIn profiles. You can see, what kind of profile they had. and then you can try to build your profile just like that, so that it kind of like catches like the reviewer's eyes, or whatever you can say that way.
Yeah. And I want to ask a question that you said is, you said you were confused if you wanted to get a master's degree or not. What was the confusion, like if you wanted to or not?
Yes. So I think what basically happened was that I was like confused between I want to get a master's like in a scientific thing or master's in like an MBA. So it was kind of like a twofold decision that, half my family was like, okay, you should do MBA and you have those like, great skills or whatever, you should hone them. And then a part of me was very scientific and wanted to do, I was not ready to part with like coding. I still love coding. It's been like close to 10-15 years that I've been doing it. I enjoy it every day. So it was kind of like that. And also, the decision of like, spending so much money. Like Carnegie Mellon is a very expensive university. And, coming from India to United States to study is also a big decision, in which, I have student loans. So many people do here as well, because the education is so expensive. So to kind of make that decision that, you're already you're working on something really cool. Like I was working on the startup that I was talking about, and to make that decision that, do I want to leave all of that, come to US, get a world-class education? But hindsight, I would do it again. I learned so much in CMU that I would have never, ever learned in my work. So I don't regret a bit.
You just took the next question out of my mind. Or was, do you have any regrets doing that? But obviously not. So let's talk about those pros of getting your master's from CMU. Talk to me about like give me like, what were in your mind are like 2 or 3 like the biggest reasons why you were happy that you did get this?
Yeah, I think the education, the quality of education is beyond par. Like it's so amazing. All the teachers are so great, and they're like so humble. Like they're all these amazing award winners that you get to learn from, and you're asking them the stupidest of the doubts, and they're like smiling and answering you. I think that's a very humbling experience as well, to kind of see all of that. And at the same time, education is one thing. Obviously the exposure, like my peers, like who I studied with are all in these amazing fields and amazing positions. So if I need any help or if I need any guidance, my peers, my seniors are always there to kind of help me. They're just like a message away on LinkedIn or on, WhatsApp or whatever platform, and they will reach out to me with the same thing that, is my company hiring, or are there good roles that, you want to go, or sort of like recently my friend wanted to have that discussion versus like PhD versus like sticking to the job, kind of like in the same situation I was like a couple of years ago. So I think, all of that thing is definitely very, very useful to have this peer group and the network which you kind of get. And the third thing is like, obviously, like the opportunities that come with it. Like, for example, like if I were in India, I would like apply for such roles. I would probably never get calls for these kind of, autonomous driving ventures, working with Meta and all of those things. Those things were only possible because I took that decision to do masters. And also like it kind of comes with the fact that, there's that understandable thing that if the person has gone to like such a good university, it's hard to get in, it's hard to graduate. I know a lot of people drop out as well. So if someone has gone through it, they definitely have some good caliber. And that's something that, is the truth.
I do always appreciate like the good things about like why like someone should. But I also want to talk to the people that like maybe it's not suited for them. Could you give like a reason why like someone like shouldn't go get their master's? Does any come to mind?
Yeah, definitely. I think you should take a look as like what opportunities you want. Like, for example, I was sure that I wanted to go in autonomous driving field. It needs a master's degree. We don't hire like people with just bachelors, even though they have got that similar experience. But like the amount of course load that you do in a master's pertaining to machine learning and CV is very necessary. But for example, like I know my cousins, they just graduated from like Berkeley, and he was working he was deciding whether he should do masters or not. And I was like, you've got a good degree, you're doing the job that you want to do. And if, in a couple of years things change, then that's a different thing. Like I revisited doing masters. I didn't continue, after bachelor's directly. So that's something you should definitely consider. The second thing is the cost. Like, for example, like the cost of education is high. Like you don't earn, like, and you're spending money. So it's basically, you're burning in negative. Like, so yeah. So you're like, studying and like, spending your time there and you're not earning. So that's something, depends on how your family is going to react to it. I think that's something which is very important as well. Yeah, I think if you're like already in like a good position, like for example, if you're already doing the work that you love, you should just continue doing it. There is no point like spending 2 years doing a master's and going back to the same role. Yeah, if it's the same thing, then continue it. You're already doing a great job.
I like that. So we just highlighted a lot of the stuff, like how you got into CMU, and some of the pros of it, some of the cons of it, some of the projects, the benefits of it and whatnot. Let's talk about how that set you up for success after you graduated then. You graduated in 2020, and if anyone's curious, you had a 4.18 out of 4 GPA, which is incredible. So applause to you on that. So standout student. But how did this master's degree set you up for success once you did graduate, project-wise and just like kind of like position-wise?
Yeah. So just to like dial back a little bit, like for example, in CMU, one of my major projects, like as I was talking in my bachelor's, was video memorability, but here it was with Meta. So I was working in this virtual reality based, face rendering. So it was more of a graphics and ML based project, which was very interesting. And that was like a really good learning experience. It lasted for a year. And I used to go to the Facebook office, like Meta Reality office, and work with them closely. It was kind of like I'm working like part-time with them as well. So that was something of a really good experience. So that obviously opened up like a lot of opportunities. So another thing which like good thing about CMU is that they have these career fairs where there are like tons of companies which kind of come, and then you can hand out your resume to them, talk to the people, kind of like make good first impression that, hire me, I'm like a good person with this background. So yeah, basically I did that. In my first semester, I got multiple callbacks for like internships and multiple offers, but I chose my current company, Emotional, which was called something else back then, but it's a Hyundai-backed autonomous driving company. And I interviewed for them, and I really liked the people I interviewed with. So I think that was something which was good. So, and I joined for internship, and that along with like my Meta experience kind of like boosted my profile to the recruiters. So in real world, for example, if you want a job, there are like basically 2 ways to kind of get it. One is that you keep applying. So, a recruiter might like your profile and they might, connect with you, and they may take you for interviews going forward, like on-site and everything. Or the other way is through referrals. So referrals is basically if you connect with other people who already work in the company, and they give you a referral that, this person, Akankshya is she is my junior in CMU and she is working in these great things and you should definitely hire her. So that kind of propels you in front of a recruiter as well. So in this kind of situation, and a lot of recruiters do just like cold message as well. They, through LinkedIn, they kind of try to reach out, kind of profile they're looking for. So that's a little rare, to be honest, like the third point. But the first 2 points are like very common. And the first one especially is very difficult to get in, because there are like thousands of applications that the recruiter kind of goes through. But like obviously like having a master's, having these kind of projects with these good keywords, keywords being ML, CNN, all those other things, kind of like, definitely puts you up for success. So if you utilize your time good in your master's, like do good projects, it's definitely going to add to your resume, and then finally in the real world getting a job as well.
Yeah, I feel like you hit on like a really important point, is like making sure like when you are applying these jobs, like you are hitting on the keywords that like they're looking for. Is it ML, if it's AI, if it's LLMs, any of that stuff, like actually applying
Yes.
these into your resume and just not doing the work, but not putting the keywords in because then it'll just be ghosted right out the door.
Yeah, so the keywords are very like are key
Yeah,
because
yeah. Key.
yeah, they're key because they have these software which kind of like gets like parses through thousands of resumes and kind of brings in whichever ones are like making sense. So I remember
Yeah.
my friend, he was this amazing person and he's really intelligent guy, but he was just not getting interview calls, and we were like wondering what's wrong. Like we are getting interview calls, he's in the same program as us, then why isn't he getting calls? And then me and my friend, we sat down with him and we are like, okay, what's going on? We took a
Yeah.
look at his resume and he had none of the keywords. He was just
Uh,
explaining the things that he was doing, but he was not using words like the main words which probably recruiters are looking for. And when we changed his resume, he got many offers. So yeah,
yeah.
magic.
I mean, I was gonna say that's a story right there worth $1 million to really emphasize the importance of keywords. There's a lot of times I feel like where qualified candidates kind of just get shut out because they're not optimizing the resume
Yeah.
with keywords. So that's a great story right there in itself on the importance of keywords. I'm also curious, like how your coursework at CMU helped or deferred from like actual real like work at like Motional.
Basically the structure of CMU, like at least in my course, was that you have certain core courses which everyone needs to take, and then there are
Yeah.
certain electives that you can take based on what you're interested in.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and so the core courses are like basically basics of ML, basics of computer vision, basics of good robotics math. Like my course was very, very math heavy. So those three courses were like in my first semester, and they kind of like set you up for basically whatever you're going to do. Basically, in my day-to-day job, I am a machine learning person.
Yeah.
I basically train models which run on the car, so which helps the car to see and navigate through like whatever it's going through. Like, is there a pedestrian, is there a
Yeah.
dog, is there like whatever, or like what's going on in the scene. So that's those three courses definitely set the foundation for me. And then my electives were like kind of helpful in that aspect as well, basics like good geometry things like in 3D rendering, how you have to render a face, like what are the 3D structures that you have, which I kind of used in Meta as well. So because
Yeah.
there was like a face rendering thing, and if you don't understand facial geometry, or you don't understand image geometry, which I would say in broadly, it
Yeah.
becomes
Yeah.
very difficult to get those kind of things right. Or I mean, you can always learn it on the job. There is no that you need to do masters to kind of learn it, but it's just a little harder because you don't have the foundations right. I think that's
Yeah.
what like I would miss, like when I was in Samsung, I didn't have the foundations right. So whatever I was trying to build were like sort of like duct tape into things together, which I understood and which I didn't
Yeah.
understand. But now it's more of like understanding what I'm doing, where the math is coming from, where the ML is coming from, and how they're joining together. So
That's crazy
definitely
cool.
very helpful.
Yeah, that is super cool. And I feel like that has set you up for success. And obviously, as you talked about with like Meta as well, then Motional getting in there. We are kind of winding out on time here. And I want to jump back to this question beforehand. Other ways to get into machine learning. We talked about like having a good resume, LinkedIn, all that good stuff. It's a very competitive field right now. Like,
Yes.
what are some other ways through projects, through papers? Like, what's just some like ways people can get into machine learning? It's a very broad question, but like, what are some ways people can get in?
Yeah, I think if for example, you do not want to do masters or anything like that, I think what it boils down to what kind of projects you do. So there are like tons of these projects. You can just select a field. It could be, I know people work in audio,
Yeah.
vision, NLP, recommendation systems. Like there are like, subdivisions in ML, which are like crazy. There are like 7, 8 of them. They're like different
Yeah.
subjects altogether. You can pick one, go to like various websites, trying to do like, I think there's Kaggle, which does like a lot of these competitions. You can try
Yep.
your hand at that. You can, lot of like, for example, my CMU courseworks, a lot of the assignments are open. Like you can go to the websites and see and try to attempt them. and trying to see how it kind of like, if you're able to solve them, that kind of like, and I remember one of my graphics course, each assignment, I had like 8 assignments. Each assignment was worthy of being written in my resume because of the amount of
Yeah.
work that it needed. So even if you do one or two of those assignment questions and you write it in your resume would definitely like bubble up to the top if the recruiters
I love that.
list.
I really, really like that. So we talked about getting a machine learning gig. And just last question for you. You get a machine learning gig. Like what are the best ways to stand out entry-level machine learning jobs?
I think, yeah, for entry-level jobs, definitely what all projects you're doing. Research papers are definitely an added bonus. And I would say that, you can like work on different projects with different people, like and try to network as much as possible, because then they can refer you in their companies. And that would kind of like put you on the top. I know early level jobs are very, very difficult because of the market which is currently going on. I keep getting a lot of messages on LinkedIn that, is your company hiring? Is there any way, we can improve this thing? But I think you should focus on like doing good projects. And, you can do part-time. There are like lots of universities with like, PhD students, who would be happy to work with you. And probably you can reach out to professors that, I'm really interested in work. Professors might or might not reply. I mean, they're busy people.
Yeah.
But a lot of the PhD people, if you've worked with them, they kind of like reply because they always want help with the projects they are doing. And if you contribute to them, you can easily add your name in the research paper, which they are going to publish. And you can easily set yourself up for success.
I love that. You are awesome. Thank you so, so much for talking to us about CMU, getting into machine learning, how to stand out. Where can people connect with you if they do want to reach out and say like, hey, I have a question? Where can people reach out to you?
Yeah, you can definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can get my name through the website, and you can reach out to me. I am generally pretty responsive. If I'm not responsive within like a week, then you can probably ping me again. But yeah, mostly once a week, I open my LinkedIn and like answer to most of the questions. And or you can email me as well. But I think LinkedIn would be the easiest way. I get like tons of emails, so it kind of get lost in the company mailing lists and all of that. So LinkedIn, I would definitely reach back to you.
Awesome. And everyone, those links will be down below. Akankshya, thank you so, so much for being here. You were awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan. It was great meeting you, and all the best, everyone.